Walkout with Paul and Jay, with red hot stories from post game, interviews, analysis, debate the hour, right here at the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of, technically we're calling it the Walkout today. Paulie Jr. here with you, but no Jay. Jay's taking care of some stuff today, but you know, we always call him the best pinch hitter, the Lenny Harris of pinch hitting when you need him, every time coming through for us. Charlie Goldsmith, what's up?
I like to be a situational pinch hitter. As opposed to swinging for the fences, I keep the swing short.
Yeah, there's no spot you can't step into and help us out and just slap that ball to left field if it's necessary. You know, we always appreciate that.
Well said.
We've got a lot to talk about, Charlie. What we wanted to do here, and why we're calling this the Walkout, is it's the end of mini camp. It's the end of the offseason program. It is now 5 weeks until the Bengals return for the start of training camp, but everyone kind of disperses. The one time the NFL calendar relents, thank God. And so this is kind of a good chance for us to take a on-field look at what mattered, what stood out, some of the people, trends, and conversations that we thought mattered from this offseason program and stuff that we just saw over the course of not just the last 3 days at minicamp, which were, I think, less than full of nuggets on the field. It was a little calm. But in general, with a lot of stuff that's been going on the field, as we've spent a lot of time talking about things happening off the field. And so we did enough of that. If you haven't listened to the Shemar episode, that is up. You can go listen to that, myself, Mo, and Jay, who tackled that topic yesterday, which is the gift that keeps on giving. And I'll touch on him a little bit later in this. But talk a little bit. Let's start this way. What I wanted to do here, Charlie, is let's go through each of us, kind of offer maybe a little bit of a couple of things in each category: trends, players, and conversations that we had. Let's go trends. I like trends. I'm a trend guy. Let's go with what's your first trend from the Bengals on-field offseason program?
Defensive back versatility. Something we didn't talk enough about last year was how static the Bengals defense was. Geno Stone played more snaps at free safety than anyone else in the NFL. Mike Hilton was only able to play the slot. Cam Taylor-Britt, I think 39 slot snaps all season. DJ Ivey was the tight end guy. Everyone had their thing. Part of the refresh is kind of building on that, expanding on that, letting guys compete for different roles, 1 and 2. I know this is going to be a much more matchup-driven defensive backfield with how they adjust week to week in 2025. So it's like I asked Mike Gesicki the biggest difference he's seen from the secondary, and he said, well, I look up and there's Cam Taylor-Britt guarding me. That's new. Yoshivas said the disguises were much different and much more interesting because of the versatility that they were using. Jordan Battle talked about how the safeties were playing sides instead of having a true box guy and a true free safety guy, and that's let him stretch his wings and do more of that. The kind of a part of the reason for that too is they want to kind of develop these guys' football IQ, help them kind of play smarter and faster in different roles and see what they have. And I mean, the secondary is the biggest question on the entire team. In my opinion, it'll make or break the season even more than guard. They're seeing what they have. They have found one thing they do well, which is this flexibility and versatility. So maybe that can be the foundation they try to build on.
I'm intrigued by one thing you said there, and that's talking about the secondary in terms of the big picture of this team. The biggest question, I'd probably have defensive line above that, but they kind of play hand in hand in a lot of ways. But there's an unproven nature. I've watched this DB group, and I've been impressed. Like I think the rejuvenation of the new coordinator has meant more there than almost anywhere else. I think the rotations and the frustration and the lack of feeling maybe value or understood would be the words that I think unfolded previously for that group. And I think they feel that freshness, in a similar way that the offensive line feels the freshness with Scott Peters, but I think it's more impactful here in this group. You're right. It's a question if they can come through and if it does make a difference, even if the only thing Al Golden does is get those guys playing confidently, then I think then you have accomplished what you wanted with him.
You've been on this for a bit, but kind of the rejuvenation of Cam Taylor-Britt. I think he's felt more empowered, kind of more freedom, more flexibility, more opportunity to build on, not just being the energy guy, but kind of backing that up with conversations. The conversations that everything you hear about Cam from kind of inside the locker room is, one, there's a hunger, there's a communication there, kind of an expectation, standard stuff as well that he feels more comfortable dipping his toe into. And then he's looked good on the field as well. Gesicki was, praising his ball skills. I believe it was Gesicki who he got that interception in coverage against a couple weeks ago. A lot of guys speaking very high. I think they know too that let me say it like this. What does Al Golden keep talking about? Ball disruption. Well, who's going to get the ball? Well, maybe the guy with the best ball skills on the entire secondary. And so I think because of that, there are a lot of eyes on Cam being that piece that they need to kind of lead the way for the unit forming its identity.
Yeah, I like that. Mine is kind of going to piggyback off of what you just said. And that is, I can't count how many times I've heard ball disruption and leading the league in takeaways. And that's something that I know Zach Taylor has always emphasized, and every coach does. I mean, every defensive coordinator. It's not like Lou Anarumo was like, the only thing I don't want to do is take the ball away. I mean, that's not the case. But I think the emphasis on teaching it on, Al talking a lot about things that he learned about ball disruption at Notre Dame all has stood out to me. And the emphasis in the way they've drilled it and they've talked about it. And it's clear that they feel like, look, you get takeaways and you can give up points with the way that this offense can play, being kind of an antidote to maybe not having all the personnel you want to at this point. And if what Al Golden has learned, and we've seen a little bit of in camp of guys getting their hand on the football and being able to make some plays, and they can find success in that, it can make a huge difference. And I think in terms of trends, just the amount that has been discussed and emphasized and drilled, and then we've seen some results of it, I think has stood out to me in terms of how the direction that this defense is going and what you're going to see that they believe that they can live and die on.
I saw a new drill today that looked a lot of fun. They had all 11 defensive guys out there, and one of the defensive coaches would throw up what I'll call a Will Levis meatball. And the safety would catch it, and then all 11 guys would kind of, form the blocking scheme, get downhill, and it was a pick six drill. I thought that was pretty fun. I thought that was pretty cool. It was different as well. And I think kind of it goes hand in hand, especially when you look at the personnel. Like, I think against the Chargers, you saw a more aggressive, decisive, and physical DJ Turner than before he got hurt. I think that downhill straight line ability helped Cam Taylor-Britt from a playmaking perspective at corner, moving from safety. Cam Taylor-Britt's obviously at his best when he's at his most aggressive. Fig Newton kind of has that edge to him. You kind of want to let him loose whenever he's on the field. So I think that kind of meshes with their personnel too. Like, a part of it also is they know they're not going to stop Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, but if you can force 3 negative splash plays, that might be the difference in a 27-24 game. That kind of gives you a path to win. And then it also fits some of the strengths of the defensive backs they have.
Yeah. You mentioned Fig Newton. That's a name that I've heard a lot this year in terms of praise being given from a lot of different people, whether it be on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, him standing out. We spent, this time last year, the whole thing was the year 2 jump from all the guys that made mistakes and as rookies and in their first year in positions. Well, it applies to Fig Newton in terms of guys that they really liked last year, but were learning on the fly and maybe could be the ones that could make important jumps. He probably gets overlooked too much in that conversation, but he was not overlooked in conversations that were had over the last few months. Before we go on and talk about some players that I want to get to, I want to remind everybody about our good friends at BetMGM. Of course, BetMGM down at the banks. If you're going down to the Bananas this weekend, Banana Ball is taking over downtown. No better place to go. Have a burger, have a cookie, like Charlie recommends. Have a couple of beers beforehand. Place a bet. I don't know if they have banana ball bets. We have to check on if they have banana ball bets. Probably not. It feels a little too on the take for the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball to take bets. But you never know. You can bet on anything these days. You can bet on the Pope. So maybe they would let you. But I do want to remind everybody, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code Growler in all caps, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager at BetMGM. Download the app. Sign up using the bonus code Growler. Reminder, all caps. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and then you will receive that same bet amount of up to $1,500 in a bonus bet if your bet loses. So just make sure you use the bonus code Growler when you sign up. So if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code Growler. Get your $1,500 first bet offer today. And stop in and tell them the Growler sent you and said hi if you're down there this weekend before Banana Ball, and enjoy it. All right, let's do players here, Charlie. What do you got? Maybe I don't know if you have an up and down or what you have, but I'll just offer what do you got.
If and I don't know if you're writing this, I'm not writing this. Maybe other people will. That's great. But if you were writing a winners and losers from minicamp and OTAs, I think there's one place you have to start. There is one. I mean, this guy will be winner number one. The story will be with his photo on it. Winner, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow looks great. It's funny too. Like, you look around, like, you follow Titans camp with Cam Ward, Browns camp, like all these camps. How does the quarterback look? What's he doing? What's the approach? Shaking off a rough day or something like that. Now, how much does that matter? Not really. But still, what you're seeing from Burrow, and I phrased this to Dan Pitcher yesterday, it's almost like he's trying to push the ball down the field and see what he's getting away with, and he's getting away with it. There are some true wow moments, some impressive throws. Just a year ago at this time, the question we'd asked Burrow at his media availability, because he was kind of babying the throws during minicamp, coming back from the wrist injury, like that's what it was. And we'd asked Joe, if you needed to, could you throw a full speed fastball right now? And he goes, yes. And we just had to take his word on it. Joe Burrow's fastball has never looked as good as it does now. There's one more thing I'll circle back to after I hear your thoughts, but like the off-schedule playmaking stuff, there's just so much more comfort and emphasis with it. It's something that, of all people, Samaje Perine raved out about, which I'll talk about more later. Burrow has the perfect cast of skill position guys around him. He doesn't have to teach a new guy a new position. He knows exactly what he wants out of everyone. Mike Gesicki was talking about, he knows how, there's now a concept they call the Mike G sail, which is a sail route, except you sit because it's a certain zone defense. And Mike's gotten so good at it that they now call it the Mike G sail. And Yoshivash had a Mike G sail recently. Like the zone stuff, the off-schedule stuff, like there were moments where that showed tangibly the advanced nature of this offense, combined with just how well Burrow's letting it rip.
I love this, and it's so true. I have a story out today kind of on the evolution of this offense, but the evolution is baked in the continuity. And Joe Burrow is a trust, feel, be a football player quarterback. Develop the trust and chemistry with me, and I will take you to great places where the money falls from trees. Trust me. And he has been able to develop that. That has been the case. He has recommended, pounded the table for players that he has that chemistry with. There's a reason why Mike G made the list and joked about being the meme of pointing me, because when he has that with you, you are a made man, okay? Because he knows he can make magical things happen if he has players that have that trust in that field. Chase Brown, watch all the off-script big plays that they created together last year. He created that trust and feel. I heard Dan Pitcher use the word, you don't want players to be robotic. You want them to learn to be playmaker. That means to me, learn how to play with Joe and be a football player and be in his mind when he's out there making all those amazing plays that you see. That's what makes this offense special. That's what makes Joe Burrow special. And that's why Joe has taken people like, no offense to Mike Thomas, the receiver, he takes the brunt of this, but he's the perfect example. Players that can't develop that trust and feel, and he has spit them out and been like, that one's not for me. But players that have been able to develop that connection, the Mike G's, the Andre Yosivashes, doesn't matter where you came from or what your background is, at all. Trent Irwin, if you've been able to do that, he will make it work. And he has nothing but those pieces around him right now, everywhere, and he has time on task with them. They are building on things that have already been built to create the next level, and that is Joe Burrow heaven right now in terms of his health, the cast around him, Dan Pitcher, Zach Taylor, everything is coming up Burrow right now, and that in the best way possible for him.
Even today, a guy entering his third year with the Bengals, Kendrick Pryor, Burrow and Pryor told me Burrow had a very, very, very subtle pre-snap sign to Pryor. The Bengals were kind of like Jamar and T didn't get any team reps today in 7-on-7. Like they were trying to, give the kids, not the kids because he's a third-year guy, but give the back of the roster guys a shot. They were all kind of rotating in there, but they were going up against, the good defensive guys. Pryor's in there. Burrow gives a little sign or something. Pryor go ball. Perfect money, explosive play down the field, down the sideline on a go route. Even Kendrick Pryor here you have out here doing this. And there's one more, I'll tell you now about the conversation I had with P. Ryan. I asked him kind of about Kansas City and Mahomes and Burrow. And he said, I got to Kansas City and kind of their foundation and what they were all about was they're kind of all in on the off schedule freelance stuff. And he said, I was coming in as a new guy. I felt like I was behind all season. Like you had Mahomes flipping behind the back passes and I'm still trying to get the playbook down. And of course, him and Kelsey are unbelievable at that, but it takes time, especially learning a new offense. P. Ryan was in Denver in 23. He was in Cincinnati in 2022. What was 2022? As P. Ryan reminded us, the year of the check down. He said, what I was expecting here was to come back and be catching a lot of check downs this spring. But he already knows the offense really well. He gets here and he's like, wait a second. Burrow's doing all this fun stuff now? Because he missed, all the crazy highlight flips and whip-de-doos that he did last year. And he sees those on film and he's seeing them in practice and he goes, wait, we get to do this now? And I know the system so well that I get to have more fun with this also? Like, P. Ryan was fired up about that, the growth that the Bengals offense has made since he left, his ability to be a part of it. And then I think the line that stuck with me was he said, Burrow's just getting more comfortable doing his thing. The coaches are letting him branch out. And that's a very Mahomes-esque quality from Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and we've seen that every year there's been a thing. And I think he's developed into a totally complete quarterback at this point that checks every single box imaginable, including those that have been used against him. And the only one that had to come along last year was getting the RPMs and the spin rate up after his wrist injury, which he did once he got through that first month and a half or so. And then you saw the level that he was playing at. I think he believes that, what we've seen from Joe Burrow the second half of last season and really the second half of most seasons, he certainly feels like, and it should look like, they're going to be doing that from week one at this point, which is kind of the point of this whole fast start thing that just will be the storyline that will never go away until they make it go away. And so if Burrow can come out and the continuity of this offense can help them pick up where they left off last year, then they should be in a good place to have the type of start that everybody has felt like they have needed to have for years. I was worried that you were going to steal my guy with your lead up to setting up that Joe Burrow conversation, because I think there's a clear-cut winner as well on the other side of the ball, and that is Demetrius Knight Jr.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think he has come in and so quickly solidified himself. We had Ted Karras today talking about Demetrius Knight Jr. as a captain, like not that he would be a rookie captain, but like you'd consider it. He has felt the way that they have viewed him from players that you talk to or coaches that you talk to. It feels like he signed as a free agent, not as a draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
He's so understanding and mature, and he's a dad, and he's a pro, and he's got this background of all the stuff he's been through, and he's been through the wars, and he's learned how to adapt in different places, and he shows up with a real understanding of how to make an impact and how to be a great player. And they have thrown him to the fire immediately into this new Al Golden defense next to Logan Wilson. He has looked apart and played it from day one. He has become like a sense of almost stability as a second-round draft pick here. And yeah, take shots at his age or whatever, but I think I view it that way. Like what they should have maybe signed as a free agent at linebacker, they just drafted it in the second round instead, like almost to the age point. And so I think that when you view it that way and you hear players talk about it, I think he's a clear-cut winner. He's the obvious starter, and he's a big part of this defense already, and he hasn't even, had to put the pads on one time here in the NFL. That's how quickly he won over coaches and his teammates. So big winner for me in terms of this offseason.
I've been asking around, like I do play that game this time of year, who's standing out, Knight was a very, very popular answer, including, it's funny, I had a different conversation with Ted about Demetrius Knight, where he talked about just he was kind of what they needed from a soul perspective. And then I'm here. So the quote from Ted was, bringing in a married father who's fast and talented is exactly what we needed. I'd like to give Demetrius Knight the nickname the Fast Dad, because that's everything you need to know about Demetrius. That's why they drafted him. That's why he's here. That's why he's going to be a starter. I think it's a cool nickname too. You know, you're the Fast Dad, and he's a proud father. And I think that I hope that sticks. I've never tried to give a guy a nickname before, but I hope that sticks with Demetrius.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, they were young and a bit lost. They gutted their soul, right? I've been using that word in terms of all the captains and the coordinator and the position coaches that were gone. Anybody with any responsibility for executing last year's defense is no longer here for the most part, and they're trying to replace that. And they don't. You know, we're talking a lot. You know, we're all going on. Charlie, you've been doing that. We've been doing the same thing, going around and talking about who's going to be the next set of captains, who's going to be the leaders here when all the leaders have been taken away. Who resets that? And I think Logan and BJ Hill have been kind of the obvious too. But I think they need that. They need leadership. They need somebody who can come in and be their attitude, who can be what young Jermaine Pratt was at one point. You know, that swagger and attitude that was social pertinent that Von Bell came in and brought to them when he signed as a free agent. They need that. And so I think somebody like Demetrius Knight is one of those that can flow right into that description.
Go
ahead.
Yeah. You know who I feel the same way about from an attitude perspective, and you mentioned him earlier, it's Fig Newton. Like, I think if he has a great camp, he has a very good chance to be a captain of this team. I think he has it. Obviously, no one's seen him at nickel. He's a complete mystery at nickel. I don't think what he showed last year gives you enough confidence in him just as a pure cover every down outside corner. It's almost like he's got to show that. That's kind of the thing he has to fix, as opposed to, you know, the mental side of the game and the behind the scenes stuff. He's acing that, but Fig is a guy that people speak so highly about in that way. Then just to rattle through a couple more winners. I mean, Andre Osavash and Chase Brown, like, not that they've reached like Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd status just in terms of stature in the league, but like they're the guys, just like Mixon and Boyd were the guys. Like, it's just them and they're scheming opportunities for them, and they're not playing special teams anymore. Like, they're just the guys. Some fun ones deeper on the roster. I'll say it again. They were working on third down packages the other day, and there was Marco Wilson on the outside and cover opportunities. I think they see something with him in specific matchups that he'll play more than you'd think for a fifth or sixth corner. From a skill position perspective, Taj Brooks was the one who got the most shout outs. He had a play today. It was kind of it ended up being a broken play, and Brooks cuts out because he had an out route out of the backfield. Then he cuts upfield, a sick cut, a really sick cut. I think it was Jamar who shouted, "I see you 2-5." And then I talked to Taj about it after, and I was going to explain to Taj about how it was just like the Joe Mixon play against the Ravens from 21. And he cuts me off and he goes, "Dude, I've seen it. We've gone over that a million times. That's exactly what I was trying to do." Now, it's like, how'd you know about that play? But he knew. He's fighting for snaps. It's uphill, but I think he's a lot better than the third and fourth string guys they've had. And then the super sleeper one is, I just think he's going to have a good preseason. Moore, number 14, his speed and his kind of upper body strength gives him something to where he'll kind of be fighting with Kendrick Pryor for that developmental spot.
Ooh, Jordan Moore, potential for the Mo Egger Award, I feel like.
That's a good one. That's a very good Mo Egger Award candidate.
That could be Mo Egger Award winner right there. We'll have to at him on that. Maybe we'll clip this out and at Mo Egger for a potential candidate right now. I'm going to go impact in the other direction of the negative, and kind of if we're doing winners and losers, it would be the loser here. And I know it's obvious, and I know we just did a podcast on it. I don't know how you don't talk about Shemar Stewart at this point. Like, everything that's happened in the handling of this, like, we can talk about right or wrong and where the Bengals exhaustion wears on them, and that this whole thing is a symptom of so many things. And get into, if you want to get into contract language and all that stuff, go back and that's fine. Just the way that it has gone down, the handling of it, the attitude, everything about it has been bad. It is just not good for the player, for what we're learning a little bit about the like who he's going to be here right now. Like, this is bad energy, and this is a bad sign for a guy who's a first-round pick who this is the time for everyone to be saying great things about the first-round pick and how they're working hard and they're putting in this time. And, man, you see all the athleticism. And I know that the business stuff has gotten in the way of that, and maybe we'd be speaking differently about it if he had signed the practice waiver and was out there. But he didn't, and he hasn't. And he ripped the organization and the team and all the other stuff that has happened. And we haven't seen this, him out in the locker room, talking to guys, doing stuff, kind of becoming part of the team in meetings out together, laughing and joking. Like, we only see a portion of these guys, so we can't report on what's totally happening behind closed doors other than we know. There hasn't been that. It seems just like it just has not been a great start in terms of impact of even just blending in with all of this. That's the understatement of the century, probably, considering the news and how this has all gone down. But I don't know how you don't talk about any of the trends or takeaways or ups or downs or people of these days and not talk about how this has just been very concerning in a big picture standpoint.
When I look at this, and this is an hour podcast, which you also did yesterday, but when I look at this, I think the starting point is the Bengals, because they're an organization that has had, like, aside from Ted Karras's extension last year, zero comfortable victories where, let's say, you've been able to run out the clock. They always make it more difficult on themselves. And there is just an expectation now, because of the history that we've seen, that it will kind of go the hard route, which is where it's going with Shemar Stewart. And with Shemar as well, it's funny, like, what's not new is the contract not being signed by June 12th. What is new is the direction that Stewart's been taking this, by not practicing, by being as vocal as he's been. Just what we're learning about Shemar. Like, I had a conversation with him on Monday before kind of, the criticism of the organization, where he talked about how he doesn't like the number 97 and still wants 4. He talked about how McKinley's the only guy he really talks to. Like, it's not a guy. You see so many guys, just like we talked about, how Demetrius just fit right in like a glove. And you see that from a lot of guys. And not that Shemar won't fit in, but in an environment where they want you to fit in so badly, you're the first round pick. The fact that he's not yet is concerning. And it makes you wonder, the guidance and the perspective that Stewart has going through this process, because of how different this is and how bold of a stance this is that he's been taking. I think these lack of reps will hurt the Bengals in 2025, and my expectations for just what he can do from a production standpoint this season, they've gone down, because Stewart will now have to, he's behind the 8 ball a little bit as he enters what will be a competition with Murphy and Osai. They've been able to build on some stuff. There's not a huge delineation between what they all could give you right now, this very second. And the trust factor, especially with Osai, just in terms of how much he knows the defense, the scheme, the technicalities. Montgomery's a very technical coach, just like Scott Peters. All that adds up, and it just creates a national story with the Bengals in June.
Yeah, it really does. I want to read for you something that Ted Karras said. Ted points out I wear a lot of hats around here. I got like, I'm the NFLPA. He's on the executive committee there. He's a captain. He's a 10-year veteran. He's been a good teammate. He's been around here. He's done extensions with the organization before. Like, he's the ultimate person to talk to about this. And he points out, I've got different perspective. My take on it would be different depending on which hat he was probably wearing. But this he said, and it stood out to me. There's a couple things about it. He said, quote, "It's not the best case scenario of how the spring could have gone for our first round pick, but there is pretty serious business aspect to our profession. He has taken counsel from his camp. The main thing I want to say is I don't think to either of our defensive ends there is any harboring of resentment in our locker room. I really hope both camps can figure this out, because we have a really good team. We had a super productive spring. We just don't want this to carry over into summer." He said, "I think it has been a distraction for the fans mostly. I know Twitter is hot right now, and since Twitter doesn't mess around, I think how it has played out has probably been unfortunate for both sides." I think him pointing out a couple of things. This isn't really a distraction for us. We just kind of go about our business. It's more in the media and on Twitter. And the message he wanted that message out from the locker room directly to those guys. we don't harbor resentment towards you. Please get this done. And when you come here, we're here for you. Like there's no problem in that regard. I think that stands out as sort of it may blow up the internet and we may spend so much time talking about it. It may fill headline after headline after headline, but in there, they all have business stuff and they all are dealing with, they're not going to let that affect the way that they treat them as teammates whenever they do show up, and there's an understanding. I think that's an important perspective to dabble into this when we kind of get into some of the intricacies of this, depending on how long either of those situations go on. And the next data point for that will be reporting for training camp in late July. Let's do this. Any conversations you want to drop in here that you had that were interesting before we wrap it up?
I mentioned the Piron conversation, so that was my answer, but we talked about that. I'll focus more in on something we've also mentioned, but I kind of went around the locker room talking about all right, who are the leaders of this defense? Jordan Battle, I thought, had great perspective. He said he pulled kind of the secondary aside and was like, we're all going to take ownership of this. Anyone can talk. If you see anything, no matter who you are, let us know, because kind of we're all we got right now. The lack of, what's the word? Tape or caution tape or whatever you want to say, that I think did exist. And it wasn't bad because, Von Bell had earned that. Mike Hilton had earned that. Jesse Bates had earned that. A lot of guys, DJ Reader, Sam Hubbard goes on, but there's just not that, and Battle reinforced this. There's not that delineation anymore, I feel, on the defense between the young guys and the old guys. That's something that Battle mentioned. That's something a lot of players mentioned as they kind of work on, who the next kind of core leadership group is going to be in. So some names that kept popping up were Battle, were Fig Newton, were Cam and Knight from an energy perspective. Obviously, Logan Wilson's going to play a central role. BJ Hill in a similar way. And then apparently Cam Sample's been extremely vocal and productive, taking aside the young guys and going kind of extra above and beyond from a behind the scenes perspective as well. So those all stood out, kind of diving into the Bengals leadership situation on defense, which has never been more important because they've, as you said, got two potential distractions with Stewart and Hendrickson. How well they lead this unit will be a massive difference this year because it was a not well enough led unit last year, and some roles have kind of started to sort out from a leadership perspective on this defense.
Yeah, Cam Sample's always an interesting one. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations over the years since he's gotten here with coaches that just love him. Like, they just love him. And it's funny, it's kind of a play of words, almost things like, are you just saying it because they have the same last name, but kind of refer to him as the Drew Sample of the defense in that he just does everything that makes life so much easier because he plays multiple roles. He plays hard. He gives you a little bit of production and everything. He's not a star. He's not this athletic, freak that you're going to, but he just gives you something at everything you want and does it the right way. And that matters when coaches are just trying to get stability out of these positions and fill different gaps as they show up. So it's interesting that he has been noted. On that note, I want to drop you in mine, and it was from a little bit of a surprising turn that our conversation with Al Golden took yesterday. And it was, there was a lot of naming of all the guys. I thought the 85 Bears were about to roll out here, man. It was like, everybody's doing great. This guy, really loving here. They're working hard. Attention to detail here. Extra meetings, all this stuff. And he must have named off everybody that you could think of. Cedric Johnson and BJ Hill, and even though he wasn't practicing the leadership, and Chris Jenkins and Kinley Jackson and really liking all this. I mean, everybody got a name. And then I was waiting for him to talk about Myles Murphy, and he didn't. And it was the one person I had interest in anyway, as I continue. I think he's the biggest X factor on this entire team. I mean, Al led by saying huge offseason for Joseph Osai, it led with Joseph Osai. Okay. And there was no Murphy. And so I was like, oh, well, what are you looking at for him? What's the next step for Myles Murphy? And the quote was, yeah, I think it's time, right? It was almost like, wow, we're already at the, hey, clock's ticking, Myles, kind of moment.
David Bell once said that about Jose Barrero, the exact same quote.
It's not great when that happens. I don't want to wheel out Jose Barrero's career here, but it's not
similar
what you want.
Archetypes of players.
Yeah. He went on to say it's time. Again, I think Jerry does an unbelievable job with those guys technically. It should start to quiet down for him now, just in general. Pass rush move, pass rush counter, run movement, run lockout, run disengagement, all those things should quiet him down. And if we can get it to quiet and let his athleticism take over, again, he's got great range, elite speed for the edge. He's big, gives us flexibility. So I'm really excited about him, but it is time. Man, did that phrase stick out amongst everything we talked to Al Golden about. And, it is boomer bust year for Myles, and the personnel department has made a big bet on him in terms of clearing the path for him to play, talking about his lack of production in the past, being about not playing enough. He's going to play. Al Golden knows this, and it is time. And it was hard not to come away from that conversation saying, man, the pressure is quickly mounting on Myles Murphy.
I mentioned it earlier, but on paper, and this isn't how I evaluate players, I promise. This is a stupid take that I'm just going to say to make a point. If you were making Madden rankings, which is, I get, but think of it as a way to rank players. Osai, Murphy, and Stewart would all have very similar Madden rankings right now. You get what I'm saying? They're all at a similar level. And where could that land? That could land with someone popping and becoming a full-time starter and playing 75% of the snaps like Sam Hubbard did. Or the margin for error is that thin to all of a sudden you're the fourth guy and someone else is stepping forward. And now you're down to 25% of the snaps. So even though there's very little distance between those three players, there's a gap in terms of role that could be extremely narrow. They could all split it right down the middle, or it could be extremely wide. And if we get to November and Murphy's still in a rotational role and hasn't clicked yet, we'll probably say, yeah, they believe in Osai, they believe in Stewart, but you mentioned it, the front office's vision, plan, and idea was a bet on Myles in 2025. And if the players you make big bets on don't hit, that has a significant ripple effect across your entire roster for a defense that's building itself with limited resources because of what they're paying their stars. So that's one of the core pieces of the season for Murphy. There's a wide spectrum of how it could go. I still think there's something there. We did a show where I talked about Murphy did impact sacks in 2024, even though he didn't finish them. And I still saw moments where I just saw overall pass rush ability, not even potential ability from him, but he didn't finish. He knows that. He's got to be better. And that kind of sets the tone for one of the big stories of the season, that if it hits, it changes everything because he's a first-round talent. And if he doesn't hit, well, then, again, his role could change really quickly because Sam, we mentioned him and roll your eyes, but Cam Sample's going to play too. I mean, he'll get some snaps in there. He'll have the Cam Sample role. That's a thing. That's going to happen. So that's going to be maybe the most interesting part of training camp, seeing how they work out that defensive end room.
There's plenty of options there, and a big circle on Myles Murphy right now to show up ready to go and figure it out. All right, this was good. This was a really good, a good walkout on kind of the themes. Not a ton happens. It's a little bit of the silly season in terms of we all want to have something to talk about, so we try to make something out of oftentimes nothing on the field. But I think there has been some interesting developments and things to chew on. Also, more notably, morning practices so that we don't have to stay late into the day and worry about that. Huge Scribe win. Biggest development of the Scribe offseason was we have now the morning training camp practices at 10 a.m. rather than the late ones that don't end until 4, and we don't get out of the locker room until 5 or 5:30, and now I've missed dinner with my family, and now they don't want to see me anymore. There's a lot of ripple effects to this.
Wow.
Okay, is what I'm saying. Yeah, I know. I'm airing it out. No. Things are great at home. People.
Family does want to see you. Confirming that.
Things are great at home. I'm just making a joke that this is fantastic, though, for us, because we love that development. And a lot of changes to how they're constructing camp and what they're going to do, not just maybe starters playing in the preseason more. There's a lot more to that. They've made a lot of changes to their training camp schedule, more than they ever have in the Zach Taylor era since, the immediate reboot. So we'll get a lot more into that as we have time to dive into that as it gets closer. But I know Charlie and I will be there with you every step of the way. Also, make sure you are checking into Power Stacks, which are just crushing it right now. Fantastic episodes as the Reds are making their way through a very interesting season that gets more interesting by the week as they start to put together a couple of runs here or there. And we'll wait to find out who's going to get the next Power Stacks bump. We've seen a couple of Power Stacks bumps thus far. I thought the Wade Miley piece was fantastic. And then to watch him come out and have the day that he did, I thought was a really, really fun listen on top of a number of different bumps in the CES background. Man, I learned something every single time I listen to Power Stacks. So I applaud you and Brian on the job y'all are doing the show. It's awesome.
Well, thank you, Paul. Do you have any Reds takes? Let's commandeer this here. Do you have any Reds thoughts or a player that's on your mind or a decision?
Yeah, I have a Reds take real quick. I have never seen a clearer solution because I'm not a trade deadline guy. I think that all the time that we talk about the trade deadline compared to the actual impact on pennant races is like a wildly out of control ratio. And we talk about it way more than it actually matters. Not that it doesn't matter, but the talk.
I disagree with that, but
it's already started. No, but it's already started. The
Okay,
3
that's
months
fair.
worth of talk over not about who's going to buy and who's going to sell. That's the most important part. But the actual transactions, I think, get overrated, in my opinion, compared to how much it gets talked about for months. I've never seen a clearer thing that the Reds need to do. Add a bat. Like when they have somebody that finds a way to get hot, break out, Will Benson or CES, or did they just get a run? They win 5-6 in a row. And then they clearly feel one bat away. And I know that's an unnuanced take based on what they have in their farm system or can trade for, who's available. It's just, man, find a way to add one more bat to this team, and they have a rotation that can win in October. And it's just find a way to get them there. And I don't know that they'll do that. I hope that they would do that. But I've never felt like it looks clearer about this is the move that should be made, assuming they can keep themselves in the mix-ish as it gets closer to time.
But Paul, when Noelvi Marte come back and Austin Hayes come back, those will be just as good as any trade deadline. Now I'm kidding. Similar to the defensive line room, a very stacked tier of players without much delineation. Fraley, CES, who still has a lot to prove and a lot he has to show me. Benson, Steer with where he's at and how he's swinging right now. Marte, where he comes back, and I'm forgetting some guys, but a lot of guys kind of in that, they have a lot of guys who'd love hitting 7th. So the fun part with this front office is because they don't have a lot of payroll flexibility. That's never been the case. This isn't any breaking news. All right, who's that player on the Athletics who might be available that can make an impact there on a deal, who you go out and target because you have a specific vision for how you're going to use them? Basically what they're looking for is the trade version of Mike Gesicki, like a guy who hasn't been able to be unlocked because of situation and circumstance in another spot, but has pure tools that have given him pedigree in the past, and then can come in and fit and blossom. That's the name of the game for the Reds, and I enjoy that process.
Yeah, and they've got to find it because I do think there's not nothing there right now. You know what I mean? There's something there. You see it, and when you have the pitching that they can have and the flashes that they've been able to have when they have strung some good offensive weeks together or gotten a little bit of punch, it makes you believe that there could be something there, especially if they get Hunter Green back full throat, where you have the ace that can be a guy that can win for you in the playoffs in big spots over and over again. I just think get him a bat, man. Get him a bat and let's see what happens and give it a shot because it's been a long time. It's been a long time. It takes me back to the 18, 19, 20 pre-Joe Burrow era Bengals seasons where you always had to be like, okay, how many days, weeks, and years are we up to on the advanced in the playoffs drought, right? I mean, when you start reaching into the 30 years, it's just a really hard thing to get past that. If you have a chance and you feel like you have a team that could be a team that could do that, to not be aggressive when you've had this kind of drought, it just hangs over everything. That every move that's made, every game that's lost, it hangs out there. So it's been fascinating, but it's been fun. And make sure you guys are listening and subscribing and telling your friends about Power Stacks. It's a great show. Tell everybody you know how great of a show it is. So looking forward to it. All right, Charlie, we'll talk to you later, man. Thanks for pinch hitting as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you.